thing that you choose for home is your home is chosen by colour. A lot of people think it is just when I talk, I'm only talking about paint, but I'm actually talking about every element of design, whether it's your floor, your couch, your fabric, your duvet, your bed, your wood, your doors. I'm talking about everything. Color is the first thing that you notice about everything that you see, and especially when it comes to interiors and fashion. We choose our clothes through color. We choose our food through color. If a child sees a brown mushy banana, they may not generally want to eat it because they don't see the yellow that they would expect. So color alone can change your perception about an object. Mother Nature is very important to me when I'm choosing colours for any of my clients. And when I get to sit down with my clients and have a chat to them about colour, they can see and understand where I'm coming from, because nature is a non-verbal language. Through colour, nature is sending us lots of different messages. For example, when we see the combination of black and yellow in nature, our brain knows that we have to fear something. It strikes fear into us. So the colour of black and yellow in wasps, tigers, and the black and yellow frog, the poisonous frog. When our brain sees that combination together, they know that there's something wrong. Hence the reason we translate that into our daily lives. In road signs, when we're driving, we see black and yellow. We know that this is very dangerous, and our foot hits the brake faster than it would if it was any other colour. So Mother Nature sends us signals through colour. If we see a lot of greenery, we know there is a lot of water. So we know that we can survive because water makes things grow. So colour is everywhere around us, and it is so, so important. It's not just a thing that we choose for interiors. It's a way of actually living. How we see colour, though, is completely different. And I find this fascinating in my job, that people have these chats about colour, and I love listening to people talking about colour, especially like people that are close husbands and wives or mothers and daughters. I spent a lot of time on retail floors discussing colour with people, but everybody sees colour completely different. And sometimes someone might see a colour as a blue colour, and another person might actually see it as a green colour. And they're not wrong. There's no wrong in seeing colour. So never tell someone what they see isn't correct, because A, you've different rods and cones in your eyes, and B, the way your brain processes is completely different. So for me, just, you know, sometimes I look at colours and I look at them completely different than my client, because I see colour very differently, and I'm working with it every single day. So I know what colours are in certain colours. But sometimes people can't see the makeup of the colour. They just see the basic of the colour. And every colour is made up of certain different colours. So for example, when we look at a blue-green colour, one personality type might see the yellow in the blue that makes it look green to them, and the other person might just see the primary blue. So when you're choosing color, don't talk about it. Always show someone what you're talking about. And that's one thing when I'm working with clients, I always show them colors and try not to mention very specific colors. For example, if I say the color green, people automatically think of the color grass. If they don't like that specific color, I may have turned them off what I had in my head, but I could be thinking about something completely different. So it's very important to remember that our interpretation of color is very, very personal, and everyone sees it completely different. In the world of color, there are cool and warm colors. And sometimes you hear people saying there isn't such thing as cool and warm colors. But for me, again, it goes back to nature. Cool colors in nature are blues, greens, and purples. And the reason being, if you think about it, the coldest elements in nature is water and sky and ice and snow that would have the bluey kind of undertones or white colors. And these are the coldest elements in nature. So the cooler colors are blue, green, and purple. But it doesn't mean that you're going to walk into a room and suddenly feel freezing. It just means they are cooler than the warmer set of colors, which are reds, oranges, and yellows. And in nature, we see reds, oranges, and yellows in warmer elements. So such as the sun, lava, fire, sand. These are all the warmer elements. So hence we feel warmer when we're surrounded by them, and they make us feel cozier. So again, it's not like you walk into a red room and you suddenly feel like you're on fire. And you know, a lot of people say that to me, oh, I can't use blue in a north facing room because it's going to be freezing. It's not that it's going to give you that feeling of cold. It's just, it doesn't give you the warm, snuggy feeling of the reds, oranges, and yellows. And I'm going to explain that a little in a simpler way. Sound is very important to us. So our color to our eyes is like sound to our ears. When we hear a huge clap, it's really loud to our ears, and it hits our ears and our sound very fast. When we hear a low clap, it's much slower and it's on a slower frequency. So it doesn't make us jump as much, and it's much softer in our ears. Color is the exact same as sound. Reds, oranges, and yellows are on a really fast frequency wavelength, and they hit our eyes much, much faster and our brain. So when we see something red, it's very powerful and it hits us much faster than something like blue or green, which are on a slower wavelength. So they hit our eyes, and the speed that they're traveling. So speed travels because color travels like sound. It travels on wavelengths. So reds, oranges, and yellow are much faster wavelengths than blues, greens, and purples. So warmer colors advance and cooler colors actually recede, which gives us the reason why they would feel a lot cooler, because they don't hug us as quick when we walk into a room. So I just really want to stress that there's no such thing as a cold color that you're going to actually feel freezing in. It's just cooler than the warmer sets of colors like reds, oranges, and yellows. And I'm quickly just going to run through some of the positives of the different color sets. So blue, for example, is a very calm and trustworthy color. So it's much, much cooler, and it's much more relaxed than a high energy color. Green as well is very, very relaxing, and it's really rejuvenating. And then purple is very spiritual, and it's a creative color. Now, their two creative colors are both purple and orange, and they contrast each other completely. But purple is creative for people who think a lot, for writers, for musicians, for people who practice yoga or alternative therapies. A lot of people will be drawn to purple for those reasons. Then on the other hand, we have the reds, oranges, and yellows, who I said are much, much faster colors. They're much more high energy, reason being they hit our eyes much, much faster than the greens, the blues, and the purples. So red is a very, very passionate, powerful color. Yellow is a positive and optimistic color, and orange is enthusiastic and creative color. The two strongest colors on the color wheel psychologically are both purple and orange. And the reason being is purple is made up of blue and red. Blue being a cooler color and red being a warmer color. So it has properties of both. So sometimes people love a real rich, dark purple with a lot of black and a lot of blue in it. Other times people like the red, warmer purples, and then some other personalities will love the lilac-y purples, which will actually have a lot of white in it. So when I say purple, people can get kind of confused because there are a million different purples, but there are really only a few color names. And then everything else, when we start talking about paint colors and fabric colors, a lot of the time there's a name put on a color for branding reasons or just to give it a name, but it doesn't actually explain what the color is. So that's why I'm always saying to people, look at color, don't talk about it. And I know that's it's contradiction because I'm actually standing here talking about color, but when you're going to design your interior, you should always be looking at the real color and not just on screen or in magazines. You need to look at the proper color to actually see and feel it. And everyone's association with color is completely different. For example, I had a royal blue school uniform when I was growing up, and the association of that color, that royal blue, I always associated school with my uniform. So it took me a long time to get over that, to be comfortable wearing that blue again, because I just associated with that. But psychology is completely different. Psychology is how it hits our brain, how the color makes us feel. And just because a color may be a high energy color doesn't mean that it's going to put you in a high energy mood. Sometimes the positive of a color can actually set off a negative reaction, because if you're in a bad mood and happy yellow is in your face, like this yellow behind me, if something very bright and high energy and yellow is in your face, if you're in a bad mood, it can become quite annoying. So you have to be very careful where you're using the colors and what you want to achieve and where you're actually placing them. And that all comes down to the function of your home. What are you doing in the rooms? What do you want to do in the rooms, and how do you want to feel in that particular space? And I think that's really important, that a lot of people put down their interior to a visual thing, and with the likes of magazines and Pinterest and Instagram, everybody's seeing all these amazing visuals. But looking at something and actually feeling it are two completely different things. And sometimes clients send me pictures of their homes before I get to them. You know, they might send me WhatsApp photos just so I'll know what I'm walking into. And like, it doesn't really give me an indication. Yes, I know where the couch is, and yes, I can see where the window is, but I don't know how it feels. And that is so important when you're choosing all the elements for your interiors, that you have to think about how is it going to make you feel when it's put in the situation that you're buying the certain item for. And it is especially with paint, it's so important, because paint is the one element that touches nearly everything else in the room. Now, I don't mean it actually physically touching it, but I mean that it wraps the room in the color. So it connects every other piece of the room and gives it that sense of feeling. And it's between 65 and 70% of the color in the room when you consider all the walls and the ceiling. So it's a huge space of color when you're talking about paint. And the thing with the paint is, it's actually the cheapest way of changing your interior, but people find it the scariest. And I have found over the years, the reason it's the scariest is because it's actually the most work when it comes to, if you're doing it yourself, if you're DIYing, or if you're getting a painter in. Because if you order a couch, you go into the shop, you order it, someone arrives, the delivery man carries it in and plonks it on the floor, and it's there. But with paint, there's a lot of work involved. There's drying time, the house can be messy, you might have painters in for a few days, you're afraid of damaging the floor, or everything else that goes with it, the fabrics, the couch, you might have children running around. So people find it a lot of work, and it's also so daunting, because there are millions of paint colors. And a lot of the time people say, what color will I paint my new build? And for example, I would always say color is the last thing that you actually choose, because it is the cheapest element of the room. You could spend a few €1,000 on a couch, on your floor, on your TV. A tin of paint is the least expensive item in the whole room. So never consider the color first. I always say, start with the floor and work your way up, because when you're talking about the floor, you're talking about the permanent things that are stuck, that are not changeable. Paint is always changeable. If you don't like it, you can do it again very cost effectively. If you get the color of your couch wrong, it's a huge mistake. and you can't replace it, you know, the next day. You can't replace it the next week. A lot of the time people are left with items that they don't like for years. But the simplicity about paint is, if you paint it and you don't like it, you can repaint it at very, as I said, a very cost effective way of changing the whole look and the whole feel of your room. So I'm just going to run through some hints and tips when you're actually choosing color for your home, because most people who know me know I don't believe in trends. I do work with paint companies. I myself have to know what's going on trend, what's happening on trend. I'm choosing colors for future, for marketing reasons, for branding reasons, for corporate reasons. So I personally have to know what's going on in the world. But when it comes to somebody's interior, I always say, look past the trends, unless the trend is what you're into. And going back to like fashion, a lot of the time it happens that you can go shopping one day and find loads of clothes you want to buy. Everything that you want is your style and you want it. And then the next season you can go and you can shop for a week and not find one thing. So you see, we can't cater for every personality every single season. So you'll probably notice there's one color this season that will suit a certain type of personality, and then another color the next season that will suit another type of personality, just like fashion. So I would say, don't get hooked on what you're seeing on Pinterest and Instagram and all that. Of course, get inspiration from all of these areas, but don't get hooked on what everyone else is doing, because they don't have your house, and your house is personal to you, and the energy in your house is completely different than everyone else's. So when I'm working with a client, I try and bring out their personality type. I'm not pushing my favorite color, which a lot of people know is orange. I very rarely would push that, because I know that's not the personality type of my client. And saying that, it is harder to do when you've lots of different personalities in the home, but it is important to get people in the home involved in decisions of color, because just because you love something that you've seen on Pinterest does not mean your husband, your wife, your partner, your sons or your daughters are going to love it, and it might make them feel completely different. So always ask people how they feel about the color is the first thing. Second thing is, look at the space and the function and decide how you want to feel in that space. So, for example, is it a relaxing room or is it a high energy room? So I would usually go around and map, when I'm walking around with clients, I map what they're doing in each room. So for example, your bedroom, most of the time, is a very relaxing space. So it's a restful kind of space. So I wouldn't, unless the personality type allows it, I would recommend that for best sleeping purposes, you use the cooler, calmer colors. And the reason being is the cooler, calmer colors actually reduce your heart rate. So it can make you feel more relaxed much quicker than a high energy room. And you've all heard people talking about the green room before people go on for interviews and stuff like that. The green room is used for anyone who is anxious or worried or stressed or sweating or panicking about being on TV, that it actually can reduce their heart rate much quicker than any other color. So the same applies to your bedroom. If you want to relax and feel calm, use the cooler, calmer colors. For example, if you wanted to use a purple in your bedroom, you would use a more relaxing purple with less red in it and more blue, and maybe a tint of that purple, which will become one of the more lilacs rather than one of the heavier purples. So walk around your room, make a map and decide what is the function of each space. The biggest query I get in the past few years is open plan living. Because with open plan living, there's so much going on in one space. Sometimes, you have a kitchen, a dining room, and a TV family living room, which means people are cooking, eating, talking, chatting, might be doing homework, they might be looking at telly, which means they're relaxing, they might be sitting down with family meal. Nowadays, with the current climate, we're actually working more from home. So some people are actually working at the kitchen table. So there's a lot going on. There's also sometimes laundry. There is, you know, laundry horses, you know, there's stuff everywhere. There's toys. So in open plan living, there is actually a lot going on. So people do find that hard to choose the perfect color. And that's where I would sometimes bring in feature walls. And a feature to me is a wall that is a feature. It's not just a plain wall just landed in the middle of a room. There's a reason why, and you know, there's a reason why we do color blocking in open plan living, to kind of define the spaces. So if someone is sitting watching the telly and relaxing, or in a reading corner, they might have a different color, a different need for a different color, because it's a different function. Whereas someone who's in the kitchen busy cooking and high energy, they might need a high energy color to keep them motivated. And also high energy colors keep conversation flowing, they keep your body moving, and they keep you more alert. So it's really important to understand the function of each room. They ring me and they'll go, "Oh, Adele, what color is good for my living room?" Well, what are you doing in your living room? Are you sitting down watching films? Is there a TV? Believe it or not, some people don't have TVs in their living rooms. They actually have them in their kitchen. So if your living room is a space of, you know, relaxation and calm and reading and listening to music, it depends on your personality and what kind of color you can actually live with. Because as I said, interpretation and everyone's personality is completely different. But if you're looking at relaxing rooms, greens, blues, and purples, the lilac-y, calmer ones are amazing. And if you want high energy, if you want vibrance, you want warmth, you use the reds, oranges, and yellows. Even alone within red, we've got pink. When you add white to red, you start getting the pinky colors. So there are lots of different colors, but there are just few color names. Always, always with paint, test the sample in the room you're actually planning to paint. I've noticed that a lot of clients buy sample pots, but then they actually paint them on one wall in one room for the whole house. So I would always say, make sure you're painting your sample pot, your sample, or using your A4 sheets or whatever the company has that you're painting, that you have you're painting the color in the room you're actually painting. And don't just paint it on one wall. So for example, if I was going to paint this room, I wouldn't just paint the wall here behind me. I wouldn't just paint a patch here. I'd paint a patch on this wall, and I'd paint a patch on that wall, and I'd paint a patch on the wall in front of me to make sure that the light, because the most important thing about this talk today is for me to say that colour does not exist without light. And I cannot stress that enough. Understanding the light in each environment and each room in your house is so, so important. So make sure that you understand the light and you know where the light is coming from, whether it be artificial or natural light that you need to depend on. So functional, or so for each function in each room, you know, sometimes you would use your kitchen more during the day, which is natural light. Then in the evening you turn on the artificial lights, and the color can look completely different. And everybody has probably heard people saying that at some point in their life. "Oh, I love that color in the morning and I don't particularly like it at night." And the reason being is because the light variance. So the color will look completely different in natural light than it will in artificial light. Artificial light being your lamps and your lights and your downlighters and your pendants and all of those kind of things. So natural light is the sunlight that's coming in through the windows. So be very aware of the light in your space, because again, when you go in to buy your couch, or you go to buy your paint, or you go to buy your fabric, you're choosing them in an environment that doesn't exist in your home. So you need to bring as many swatches as you can home and stand in the environment that you're going to use them in. Also, the time of the day is very important of when you choose the color for your home. So for example, in your bedroom, I would always say, make sure you love the color at the time of the day you're using the room. So you might not love it all day, every day, but if you love it at the time of the day. So for a bedroom, for example, we use it at night and early in the morning when the curtains are closed. So when you're choosing the color, don't pick it on the brightest, sunniest day with the lights streaming in the window. Make sure you look at it at night and use sample pots, put them on the walls and look at them for a few days. And you know, look at them for a few days. Don't just rush out and buy the paint that afternoon. Look at them for a few days and see how you actually feel about them. With small rooms, a lot of people always say to me, oh, don't worry, it's a small room, I'm just going to paint it white. White is not magic. It's not going to make a room any bigger. If it did, we would all be painting our homes white. My house will be white everywhere. White will not make a room feel bigger. Lighter colours will not make a room feel any bigger if it is small, and if it is dark, if there's not enough light, it won't look bright. But the key in achieving, you know, tricking our brains, because our brains are very, very clever, lighter colours always will look brighter when they're contrasted with a darker colour. So for example, when I'm working in a small room, I may consider painting the walls a lighter colour, but then I might bring woodwork dark. I might paint the skirting, the architrave and the door dark. And I might even paint, I'm known to paint a ceiling. So sometimes I might paint the ceiling a dark colour and the walls a brighter colour. So my brain is tricked into believing that the walls are actually brighter because they're contrasted with a dark ceiling and a dark door. And you can do it the opposite way as well. If you have a small room, use white on your skirting, architrave and door, and use a darker colour, a much darker, at least 30 or 40% darker on the walls. So then your brain notices how bright the white is. So I know that can sound, you know, it's only when you start doing it that you realise, you know, how clever it is. But remember, light colours will always look brighter when they're contrasted with the dark. If a light colour is on the wall, very similar to the skirting and the door, everything will just be very bland and it may feel a little bit cool. And white is one of those colours that it is a cooler colour. Again, going back to nature, white is seen in ice, clouds, snow, rain. White is the coolest colour possible. White can be amazing in an interior if it is styled into the design, if white is part of the original design. But just by painting a room white won't give the feeling and won't make it any brighter, and it will just make it more bland. So be very careful with white. And again, don't get me wrong, I love white. I love using white when white becomes part of the design. But if you're just thinking, oh, I'm going to repaint, oh, I'm just going to paint it white, think about if I had a white wall here, it would just contrast everything. It just contrasts so much. And that's why it can actually make a space feel bigger when it is contrasted against a darker color. So please always remember that. So the top tips are always use samples. Remember to look at the light in every single room. Don't paint your sample, all 10 paint samples in your kitchen, then buy the paint and paint your bedroom. Always test the sample in the room that you're actually painting, and paint it. Always paint the sample in a few places. Think about the function of the room, who is using the room, and what they're actually doing in the room. Always look at your lighting, natural or artificial. Is it a day or night room? When are you using the room? And remember that small rooms can take colour if the contrast is right with every other element. And there's just one more thing that I want to say, that I find when people are new builds, especially when they're choosing wood for their floor and their doors and their architrave and everything like that, remember that at the start of this presentation, I said that everything is chosen by colour. And remember, wood is a colour too, okay? Every piece of wood is a colour. I don't care if it's Canadian bleached oak or has a fabulous name on it. When I'm talking to clients, I just want to know what color they actually see, because sometimes woods can go very yellowy. Sometimes woods can have a red undertone. Sometimes woods can be very orangey, and sometimes woods can come out black. Some of the browner woods can be very black. So be very aware that wood is a color. And the reason I'm saying this is sometimes people hire me to choose colors. You know, they think they just want to repaint. Oh, we want to repaint everywhere, Adele, can you help us pick colors? But when I actually go to visit their homes or on site or in a commercial building or whatever, I notice it's not the colors that they don't like on the wall, it's maybe the wood. Because yellow wood can get very yellow. And if we have yellow floor, yellow doors, yellow skirting, yellow architrave, yellow, pine kitchen, pine doors, a yellow wood kitchen, our beds, our furniture, our coffee table starts to look a bit yellow. Sometimes it's the yellow in the wood that can drive people insane. And yellow is actually one of the least favorite colors of the world. And a lot of people, when you ask them, I do a lot of training sessions and I always ask people what their favorite color is. Yellow always comes down very low in the choosing of colors, and people who love it because it's high energy and it's bright and it usually goes with their personality. But yellow in general comes down very low. So be very careful. Some of the woods can be quite yellow. So always think about that when you're choosing your wood, because it is super important to remember that. Remember, colors contrast each other. So navies and blues are quite popular painting walls. And I've noticed people coming back to me saying, oh my God, I chose navy for my wall and now my wood is looking yellow. It's not that it has started looking yellow. It was probably always yellow, but you had a different color beside it. But colors change color. They take on a different personality when they're put beside different colors. So it's very important to remember when you're picking every single element of your interior that they're all made up of color. And so the last thing I'm going to say is think about your interior as putting an outfit together for a big event. So for example, and this applies for guys as well, that if you're going to a wedding, let's say, or you're going to the Galway races or something, you will notice, or you will find that the night before you go to the event, you map out exactly what you're going to wear, what shoes, what handbag, what tie, what cravat, what socks you're going to wear. You know exactly what you're going to do before you put it on and before you use it. And I would say it's as simple as that for your interior, your colors, is to make sure that all of the colors work together as a whole and don't just choose in isolation. Think about everything. Think about the space, all the other elements, the color of your wood, the color of your couch, the color of your paint, and then it will make the whole process a whole lot easier. So I hope you found all those hints and tips useful, and I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for joining us and supporting us, to our main sponsors who have supported us throughout this whole thing. It's Albany Home Decor and Sunnis Bathrooms, thank you so much. And to our friends at Acres Hall who have sponsored my talk for you today, which I hope you have found really, really useful. So thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of the show and I will see you later. Take care. Bye.